Tensions between Russia and Ukraine entering a dangerous new phase. A live look now at the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. President Joe Biden says he's convinced that Russian President Vladimir Putin has decided to invade Ukraine and that an attack could come very soon.
CBS correspondent Skyler Henry joining us live from the White House, where the president is pushing for diplomacy while the world waits for Russia's next move. Skyler.
Ryan, Sarah, good to see you. Well, based off of what Russian officials have said, they do not intend to invade Ukraine, but everything. U.S. intelligence, defense officials, all of them, all saying that based off what they've been seeing, those 190,000 troops around Ukraine, an invasion is imminent. Air raid sirens filled the air in parts of eastern Ukraine Friday, and a bomb ripped through a car outside a government building. Pro-Russian rebels are ordering residents to load onto buses, evacuating them to Russia. There has been shelling in the region over the past few days, and U.S. officials have warned the simmering conflict here could be a spark for a Russian attack. But Russian President Vladimir Putin said Friday his forces along Ukraine's border are there defensively. U.S. and European officials estimate they number about 190,000. Putin is also demanding NATO not allow Ukraine to join its alliance. Members of NATO and other world leaders are meeting in Germany, where Vice President Kamala Harris is pushing for diplomacy.
We are also committed, if Russia takes aggressive action, to ensuring there will be severe consequence in terms of the economic sanctions we have discussed.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is visiting NATO countries. He's now in Lithuania, and earlier he met with U.S. troops in Poland. Austin says he's seen no sign Russia is pulling back any of its troops.
Moving closer to the border, dispersal of troops, increasing logistical capabilities.
Here at the White House, President Biden hosted a call with U.S. allies about the crisis in Ukraine. He believes a Russian attack could be imminent.
We believe that they will target Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, a city of 2.8 million innocent people. If Russia pursues its plans, it will be responsible for a catastrophic and needless war of choice.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have agreed to meet in Europe next week, but only if there's no invasion. Now, what remains to be seen at this point is whether Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will actually be in the country if and when Russia decides to move forward. He's expected to be in Germany actually on Saturday to speak with other allies to talk about de-escalation in that region. Many U.S. officials believe it would be a bad move for him to leave that country because that would give Russian President Vladimir Putin an opportunity to strike. Ryan?
And Skyler, so what is the president saying about the door to diplomacy?
Right. Well, he hasn't really closed that window, if you will, Ryan. He hasn't taken it off the table, saying that as long as Russia does not invade Ukraine, that can still happen. We know that Secretary of State Antony Blinken has asked Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to meet next week in Europe to talk about ways to de-escalate tensions in that region. We should also say that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is looking to do the same. Vice President Kamala Harris, as a matter of fact, right now in Europe, speaking with other allies as well, trying to figure out ways to de-escalate that situation, really an all-out blitz, if you will, of top U.S. officials trying to really alleviate the situation that we've been seeing there over the past few days and weeks.
All right, thank you very much, Skyler Henry, reporting live from the White House. And the escalating conflict has investors on edge. The Dow dropped 232 points today. The Nasdaq was down 168, and the S&P fell 31.